I'm delighted that our final panelist today is from what I think we could regard as a customer rather than an operator, which is eBay. Usman Ahmed is Global Policy Counsel at eBay Incorporated's Public Policy Lab. His work covers a variety of global issues, including international trade, intellectual property policy, and financial services, viewed from an internet economy perspective. He's also an adjunct professor of law at Georgetown University Law School, where he teaches courses on international law and policy issues related to the internet. Prior to eBay, Usman worked at a number of policy think tanks in the Washington, D.C. area, focusing on good governance issues. His academic career has embraced the University of Michigan. He's got an MA from Georgetown University's School of Foreign Service and a BA from the University of Maryland. So please welcome Usman Ahmed.
Thanks, John, and thanks to the conference for inviting me to talk here. And as John mentioned, eBay is certainly a customer of the Post, but I'm actually going to talk about our customers, which is also your customers, really the businesses that use eBay as a platform, an internet platform to trade around the world. So starting with the internet, this is a visualization of one day in the life of the internet. And these are people logging on all around the world, connecting, sending emails, sending information, sending text messages, checking Facebook, shopping, doing e-commerce, checking bills, doing all sorts of millions of different things that you can now do on the internet. And it's kind of stark, as one of the earlier speakers mentioned, how in 1995 was really the start of the commercial internet, how incredibly global this network is. I think sometimes we don't think about people in Argentina accessing the internet or people in Nepal accessing the internet, but really it is becoming a rapidly globalized network. And it actually reminds me of another image that was also shown by an earlier speaker, this one, which is a representation of global postal kind of coverage. And this is a representation of all of the zip codes in the world, actually, countries with zip codes. And so you've got a global kind of communications network, you've got a global logistics network, and what's happening and what I understand is going to be discussed in more detail tomorrow, and I wish I could stay for that, is kind of how these two trends are converging. And so I'm going to state something obvious here. The internet and global logistics are kind of changing commerce generally, and eBay sits at the center of that. We connect buyers and sellers from all around the world, and we partner with logistics providers to actually deliver a lot of the packages. But what's happening is a complete shift in the way that commerce is done, and I think you all recognize that as parcel volumes are going up, e-commerce as a sector of retail is going up, but I want to add one other additional layer to it because we're talking about universal service obligation as kind of the theme of this talk, and that's who is actually taking advantage of this. So this is Vincenzo and Maria from Naples, Italy, and they have a very small business called You Dream Italy, okay? It's a poor English translation of a pretty decent Italian term. But they sell all sorts of locally manufactured Naples products. So you've got your olive oil, you've got your tomatoes, you've got your croissants and baked goods, all manufactured locally in Naples and sold around the world on their website. They take PayPal, they sell their products all around the world on their website. They use Facebook. They have 1,000 followers on Facebook from all around the world. Where they kind of curate and gather more attention to their products. They, of course, as I know them, they have an eBay page where they sell all sorts of locally manufactured brands and products. And so this is the example of where smaller businesses are going now, that they are kind of taking their, what once was a main street or roadside shop that would sell to people who are walking by. Now they're listing their products online, and they're using posts as well as express carriers to deliver those packages all around the world. So You Dream Italy actually sells to over 40 countries around the world, which is unbelievable when you think about the idea that this is just a couple that really started this business and would have been 15, 20 years ago kind of limited to whoever walked by their shop in Naples. So at eBay, we have a phrase that we use a lot that, you can tell these anecdotes and talk a little bit, but you need data if you actually want to convince anybody of anything inside of our company. Luckily, we have a lot of data. And so the team I sit on at eBay is actually a research team that does a lot of economic analysis on the data that we have around the world. And so we just released a report, actually, focused on Europe and how small businesses around Europe are using the internet and logistics providers to trade all around the world. And the big headline that the Wall Street Journal had when we released this report was, eBay says it's good for Europe's business, okay, which is, I guess, our corporate communications people were happy that eBay was in the headline, but I was kind of disappointed because the report wasn't actually about eBay. It's about all these small businesses all around the world that are using the internet and logistics providers to trade. And so I would rather have had the title be small businesses from Europe are trading all around the world, because that's really what the report is about. And there were 3 big trends that we noted in the report. So the first one is, as I'm saying, small businesses across Europe are trading all around the world. And to demonstrate that, we compare on your right side, traditional businesses in the UK. So about 28% of traditional businesses in the UK actually export. When we looked at the businesses using eBay, over 90% of them were exporting to different countries. And these tend to be really small businesses. These are not large manufacturers. These tend to be pretty small retailers. And again, they are all using the post system or the express carriers to trade their products. Number 2, this trend is growing. So it's not just that they're exporting a lot, it's the growth trends are actually really exciting. So here's another visualization of this. In 2010 to 2014, the small businesses on eBay that were exporting saw their export revenue go up by 110%, 105%. Over those 4 years, whereas the traditional exporters, and this is across Europe, these numbers are not just limited to the UK, they're all of the major European markets, saw their business increase by 26% over that same time period. So 4 times faster growth for these businesses. And what I've been trying to focus on, which is that it's not just that it's a lot more growth, there's actually a lot more players involved. So this is a visualization from Spain describing sellers in Spain, small businesses. In 2010 to 2014, there were 200% more sellers. So more businesses are coming into this trend every day, and that's been noted a few times as to we're still seeing the e-commerce trend kind of continue. And lastly, it's not just a big city trend. So traditionally, and we've been talking a lot about large senders of mail. And so I think large senders of mail used to be big businesses that tended to locate in big cities. But actually, in this report, we did something that we've never done before, which was called a digital density index. And basically what that did was it looked at the amount of businesses that we had in different jurisdictions or cities all around all around Europe, and kind of compared out where there are actually heavier concentrations of businesses per district. And so it's not London, so this is of the UK obviously, it's not London and West London that are kind of the biggest density places where you see small businesses getting online. It's actually Manchester and Lancashire and Yorkshire, which are kind of more rural. They're not totally rural, but they're more rural than downtown London, where a big traditional mailer might have located. So now you've got businesses from all across Europe, from every little nook and cranny, rural and city, who are kind of trading all around the world. And I could have shown the flip side of this, which is obvious, that consumers of these products are all around the world and in every single jurisdiction in every city. So what does this mean for the mail and express sector? I think both challenges and opportunities. So first, on the opportunity side, I think you've got the opportunity to deliver all this rapidly growing sector of commerce, where packages of all types will be sent around the world. The challenge, and I hope nobody from USPS is here because this next video kind of picks on them a little bit, and I thought I would show it in Europe so nobody would get mad. But the challenge is the systems that were put in place, as was mentioned before by the last speaker, were not designed for this type of commerce to exist. And so we created this little mashup video of how to design a website and how to fill out a USPS form.
Hey guys, it's Joe here from LazyAssStoner.com, and today I'm going to prove to you that setting up a website doesn't have to be complicated.
Hello, this is Steve from ChaoticThinking.com, here today to explain how to fill out a Postal Form 2976-A, or a customs declaration.
If I wanted to set up a website about bike tricks and I wanted to call my site Uber Bike Tricks, I would just type in Uber Bike Tricks and then click the search.
You first pick the form up in the post office. It has this cover sheet on it here with the instructions on how to fill out each section.
Just copy the first name server address and then go back to your Namecheap window and paste it into the text box marked 1.
Put one item per line and fill all this in. If you have more than 4 items, you're going to have to fill out an entire another sheet to go along with.
So just a little bit of comedy, but you know, it's real, and it's what our businesses and our consumers are constantly talking to us about, is how to improve the processes that they have to deal with on the physical side. So now this is the boring slide that I show, where it's kind of like a lot of the recommendations that have already been made, you know, make the system more affordable, kind of create cooperation, track and trace and on labels, on boxes, and then introduce more transparency into the system. I think another one that I would add to this is kind of, you know, improve digitization of the system would be a big benefit. And there are people in this room who are far more expert on each of these individual levers and gears on how to actually improve the system than I am. So I'm going to just throw out one big idea that is perhaps laughable, but what the heck, this is a room of thought leaders and people who could potentially do something like this, so might as well throw it out there. And it's based upon actually the way in which the internet functions. And which is a little bit complicated, but that's what I work on. And so when we think of the internet, we think of, oh, I go to google.com and I type something in and somehow, you know, the information shows up and I get to access whatever I want. It's actually a pretty complex, but in its nature, relatively simple way to connect computers, okay? And so this is one of the original founders of the internet, Vint Cerf, drew up this slide 20 plus years ago where he talked about what the internet actually is. And so to try to make it as little techy as possible, you have one computer on your left side that has some information on it, and it wants to send it to the computer on the right side. And so what it does, actually in mail terms, is it puts a wrapper or a kind of envelope around it, and it puts this thing, the TCP/IP, the Transmission Control and Internet Protocols, around that piece of information. And those TCP/IP are just numbers. They're a system of numbers. They're a standardized set of numbers, like an address or a zip code, that provides information on where that packet of information should eventually end up. And so then it gets broken up into a million different packets, all along different computers, whatever the fastest route is, and as long as that envelope still has the information of where it's going, it gets brought back on the other side. So that's the key, is that there is this envelope, much like the mail, where there is information on where the packets should actually end up in the end. And so if you see this visualization, you've got dad who's got one computer, he might be in the US, you've got mom who might be in France, you've got grandpa who might be in Australia, and all of them just use these sets of numbers for their computers, and that's how they identify one another and are able to send information to one another, is that these 1.192.168, that's an IP address, and it kind of demonstrates where the information should actually end up. So the question is, and the challenge or the radical idea is, you know, I showed you this visualization earlier, and I said this is of zip codes. But actually now I want you to pay attention to the colors, because the colors are actually different types of zip codes. So the light blue is like for 5-number zip codes. The dark green is for 6, and the black is for like 8. And so there are all these different actual numbered requirements of zip codes. And it's kind of a, you know, crazy example, but we could think about potentially harmonizing this set of data points so that it becomes a simpler process. And there are all sorts of those kinds of information systems involved in moving packages around the world. And I know that a lot of companies and entities have done a lot of work on how to harmonize these standards and systems, but more, I think, could be done. And so I'm not the first person to suggest this. There's an academic team out of the University of Montreal that's created this physical internet initiative to try to use some of the principles of harmonization and interoperability that tie the internet together in terms of data and apply it to physical logistics and movement of goods. I wasn't planning to advertise this, but they're having a conference in like a month here in Europe. And so, there are people working on this and trying to figure this out, and I think it's incredibly important. And I think that may not be the solution to just, obviously the system of moving packages around the world has a lot of history, has different players, whereas when the internet was founded, it wasn't building on top of anything really, like it was a new technology. It used the telecommunications network, but it built this new kind of standardization on top of it. And so I'm not suggesting that we all go out and figure out how to do this physical internet thing right now. I'm just saying, it's a challenge to kind of think creatively about how to address this problem of universal service, of lowered letter volumes, of raising packet volumes. We need to think perhaps creatively about how to actually address that. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Usman. An interesting approach. Very much sort of looking at universality from the customer perspective, which I think we had some discussions about this morning.